All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is Wednesday, and you know what that means. Wednesday Wisdom, reading from Dr. Wayne W. Dyer's Wisdom of the Ages for purposes of teaching and expanded commentary. Hope everybody's got themselves a beverage handy. Love myself some tea, and we are going to get into today's topic, which is, to me, always an important one, nature. And so this bit that Wayne Dyer did here comes from William Wordsworth. He was an English poet who poetically expressed his love of nature and respect for humanity without regard to class distinctions. He lived 1770 to 1850. And the little poem he took here from William is titled "Nightingale, Thou Surely Art." So let's dive right into it and see what we can learn and expand upon in this concept of nature. All right. I heard a stock dove sing or say his homely tale this very day. His voice was buried among the trees, yet to be come at by the breeze. He did not cease, but cooed, and somewhat pensively he wooed. He sang of love with quiet blending, slow to begin and never ending, of serious faith and inward glee. That was the song for me. Interesting. I stumbled over that one line, yet to come at by the breeze. That's interesting. So, Wayne Dyer describes down here, these soulful writers seem to be immersed and have immersed themselves in nature and create these poems that stem from their state of bewilderment and ecstasy. And I was just talking about the same thing with somebody yesterday about how when you spend, there's certain times of our lives, at least hopefully for many of us, that we spend more time in nature than other times, and it's noticeable and very easy to notice when you look back on those times where you spent the most time in nature that you have a different experience, which is what I think Wayne Dyer is talking about here when he describes their state of bewilderment and ecstasy. There's something to be learned by nature, from nature. Of the thousands of these poems I have studied, Wayne Dyer continues, I have selected this one to represent the topic of nature. It is from one of the world's most gifted and prolific poets, William Wordsworth, who wrote while Europe was exploding in revolution in the late 18th century. Nightingale, Thou Surely Art, exemplifies Wordsworth's ability to dramatize, thought he was going to say demonstrate, his ability to dramatize how imagination creates spiritual values out of the memory of sights and sounds in nature. And that's the key point right there, ladies and gentlemen. And it's talked about replete throughout all different teachings of these kinds, is where one way to connect to source or the Tao or, the spiritual part of yourself is being in and spending time in nature and to listen to the sights and the sounds. And like if you're in an area of a forest where there's a bunch of birds going off, different kinds of birds all around, and you close your eyes and try to imagine all the locations, that's just a unique thing in its own. But these practices, Wayne Dyer continues, his lesson to all of us is that the wilderness is therapy. Imagine the poet simply listening to the sounds of a bird and listening with such intensity that he could write down the words of this very basic yet universal human experience. And then he paraphrases, who has failed to hear a bird singing? Who has failed to hear a bird singing? And convey He sang of love with quiet blending, slowly to begin and never ending. Of serious faith and inward glee, that was the song for me. Allow Wordsworth's poetic observation to inspire you to go out into the wilderness, even if only your own backyard or a public park, if that is all you can manage, and listen, pretending to be one of the many poets who preceded you here. And the thing that I did when I was back in Illinois recently was there was an area like I was just describing where there was a really forested area where there was thousands of trees, 360 around me going off different sounds, like probably 100 at a time or more. And I was trying to imagine the locations of each different one as it went off. And that was a very interesting practice in its own that I think is what's being described here. So even if you're only have your backyard or the park, so memorize the easy for me to say, memorize the sounds and sights of nature by immersing yourself in the present moment and shutting out all the distractions that fill your busy mind. You can allow one stock dove to sing or say this homely tale this very day, and it will be just for you. Indeed, the wilderness and all its natural sights and sounds is more than therapy. It is a connection, a link to your soul and the eternal creative energy of God. That is the energy that nature uses each spring. And see, that's the thing that fascinates me about watching nature is the cycles and the knowledge in the cycles, like the way that trees prepare for each season going forward. And that's a really deep study in its own. But when you look at it in a philosophical, spiritual context, it's fascinating how brilliant and perfectly harmonious that it all runs. The eternal creative energy of the Tao or God or Source or Great Spirit. This is the energy that nature uses each spring to write a new chapter in the book of quote unquote Genesis, yearly Genesis. Emerson observed on the western side of the Atlantic what Wordsworth noted on the eastern side at essentially the same time. Everything in nature contains all the powers of nature. Everything is made of one hidden stuff. Maybe that's a good way to say it for people that don't like to be super spiritual or metaphysical. It's all made of this, and what's working it is this like kind of hidden aspect. This includes all that is natural, including you. Yes, you too are part of this world of nature. You desire to be in solitude, to be free, to be your natural self, to follow your own intuition, to sing without being criticized, to flow as the rivers do, our natural instincts that are often ignored. And I say it's too bad because so much of us would love to do all of those things, and we often ignore the impulses. Ask yourself, what are the most pleasant memories of your lifetime? The very likely are your personal ecstatic encounters with nature. That's fascinating. I'll have to ponder on that one. Let me know what you think, ladies and gentlemen. The feel of bitter cold on your face, or the sound of water, or the wind lapping and roaring. The sun penetrating your body at the beach. Penetrating, that's a weird word. The sights and sounds of autumn leaves as you walk in the woods during fall. I have some great fall paintings, and so there's something about the oranges and the yellows that really stand out. I tell you what. A camping trip when you slept outside and listened to the mysterious sounds of the forest in the darkness. How did you lose your eyes and ears? How did you forget the ecstasy of nature, ladies and gentlemen? Go back to that place that Wordsworth describes, trees and breeze, cooed and wooded. These are more than a poet's rhyming schemes. They're the thickets, the tickets, sorry, talking about so much nature here. They are the tickets to a lost beauty. It's powerful. He wrote this chapter in kind of a poetic nature. It's interesting. Several decades ago, I was a professor at St. John's University in New York City. Wayne Dyer says, the afternoon hours just before my classes commenced were the most hectic time of the day. He says his outer office would be teeming with graduate students needing something from him, their advisor. My secretary would be buzzing his phone with unceasing interruptions. A dean could be demanding my attention for some administrative matter, and I would be filled with anxiety over all this push-pull pressure. How many of us, even if they're not situations exactly like that, but whatever in your life, have experienced that same kind of pressure, anxiety, which over days and days builds up into stress, even if you're working at the simplest place like a fast food restaurant or a grocery store or the ice cream shop, and the mundane activities that is just being described, you have things, this happens and that happens, and we all end up being filled with anxiety over all this push-pull pressure, knowing that you had these things to do. And amid all this chaos, Wayne Dyer continues, he goes, I would frequently excuse myself and announce to my secretary that I'd return in a moment because I had an emergency. I've been thinking about this lately. Sometimes people need to take emergency, like calm down breather breaks. I call them meditation breaks, but you know what I mean, ladies and gentlemen. So he says, oh, I lost it. Because had an emergency. I would then retreat to a public park a block from his office there. He goes, there I would find his favorite bench, surrounded by trees and the sights and sounds of nature, and he would just sit and listen for 15 minutes. This tranquil setting was my therapy, Wayne Dyer says, my escape to sanity. No one in my department ever knew where I went or why during my frequent emergency escapes. But when I returned, most of the problems had been resolved, and those who needed my attention were handled by a de-stressed professor. See, somebody who wasn't already stressed out. And yeah, it's so fascinating how our subconscious survival instincts have us always feeling like we're being chased by a tiger when we're not physically threatened at all. We're just living life. And I think it's important for us to recognize that and come back. This goes back to the finding peace in our lives and connecting with nature. That's so great. Both videos this week will be about the ways to get to that peace. This one's connecting with nature. The other one yesterday was more metaphysical Tao way about talking about it. The grand show is eternal. It's not an accident that so many of our most revered poets and writers have found nature to be the source of their artistry. It is in nature that one loses all judgments and false pretenses because nature does not judge, which is, as the famed naturalist John Muir once said, the grand show is eternal. It is always sunrise somewhere. The dew is never all dried at once. A shower is forever falling. Vapor is ever rising. When you treat yourself to nature, you become one with the eternal show. Your soul has the opportunity to harmonize with you and your world. Harmonizing has been another one of the keys of both of these books. Wordsworth's lyrical little poem is more than an observation of a bird in nature. It's a plea to all of us to let go of our obsessions with the pettiness that drives us crazy. Like the one that really, I think, got me obsessed with this is when I seen multiple people in the same day drop the trash or something. I think it was something like that. And it was like they had just, received the worst news of their life, or they were being attacked, or they freaked out. And I was like, wow, I've just been learning about this. And this was, a couple of years ago. But when you start to get to these different levels of looking at life, when you change, the way you look at things, the things you look at change, and then you can advance and go, you transcend, you go above and beyond certain things that used to be so silly. That doesn't mean 100% of the time, but the more you do it, the more it becomes an automatic thing. And over years of practice, you kind of find yourself laughing at old silly habits that you used to have of getting upset about silly things. But anyways, I like to ramble on sometimes. Hope you enjoy it, ladies and gentlemen. If you're getting value, consider subscribing, smash the like button, and leave a comment. Let me know what you think about this. So, Wordsworth's lyrical little poem is more than an observation of a bird in nature, like he was just saying. It's a plea for all of us to let go of the pettiness that drives us crazy and live in harmony with the sights and sounds of nature. Indeed, they all sing for you. So to explore what William Wordsworth offers us, try the following. And he gives us a few suggestions here, which is what's great about these books. And that's why you should get the physical copy so you can have it for reference in the future. I've got that linked below in the description. So Wayne Dyer says here, number 1, give yourself a designated time each week. Remember his emergency escapes. Each week or each day, if you can, to walk barefoot on the grass. I was doing, now it's spring. Spring's coming in, so we can do this, ladies and gentlemen. And if you haven't researched grounding and the science of that, you might question these ideas a little less, because back in the 70s and things, the scientific pursuit of trying to prove a lot of the principles that everybody knew worked, in the woo-woo spiritual, whatever you want to call it, are now pretty much all proven to be effective through, scientific research. And so grounding and walking barefoot on the ground, in the grass or on the earth, is just one of those things. So Wayne Dyer continues here, or to immerse yourself in nature and just listen. No assignments, no duties, just listen and observe the perfection of the natural world. Remember, the wilderness is therapy, ladies and gentlemen. Number 2, write your reactions to nature in the form of your own poetry or essay. I like that challenge. Forget about rhyming schemes or the rules of grammar. A friend of mine describes his experience as going from pissed to blizzed by giving himself some time in a natural setting. Allow yourself to be a poet and record your divine intuition as you commune with nature, just as Wordsworth did a few centuries back. Number 3, plan extended time in nature on your next vacation. Consider a trek in the mountains, while white water rafting, skiing, camping. These are delights that will bring you the bliss you seek and the memories of a lifetime. I have some great memories hiking. That's what I thought earlier when he brought up that question. What's like one of the greater memories of your life? And it probably has to do with nature. And the first thing I thought of was a great couple hiking trips with an old friend. Number 4, sleep outdoors one night, even if it is only in a tent in your backyard. Do it with your family, particularly your children, and notice the excitement they all feel by being in nature. This feeling of excitement is precisely what you can recapture in all areas of your life when you allow your own nature to play a more dominant an enthusiastic role in our lives. Boom. That's a good one. That's a really good one. There's another chapter I was looking forward in here. Right up here, it's called Reverence of Nature. It's a couple ones out. And it's got Chief Seattle, Orin Lyons, Wolf Song, Walking Buffalo. And so it's a Native American perspective. Luther Standing Bear, another by Walking Buffalo. That's a longer one, but I'm really looking forward to that one because that will be a perfect tie-in to what we just went through from a more, 1770s to 1850s European perspective. And so it's very fascinating. And to me, that time frame, the more that I learn, the more that I research about every area of interest, whether it's psychology, spirituality, and every area of interest, is that time frame seems to be very important in the development of history up till now. I mean, you could argue that for probably any time frame, but that one has been standing out to me a lot lately because of certain synchronicities with that. Fascinating. All right, ladies and gentlemen, hope you got value. If you did, like I said, consider subscribing. I have the book linked in the description below. I'd love for as many people to get Wayne Dyer's books because, it's funny. I ask people, so have you ever heard of Wayne Dyer? And they're like, no. I'm like, dang it. And I've asked a lot of people. And I'm like, that's so weird. Like that, he could be a best-selling author and sell so many and write so many books and do so many talks and speeches and things. And it's like, I guess some of these people just go underneath the radar and get missed. Or maybe I'm just a weird individual that's fascinated with these higher truths, the wisdom of the ages, in a way for us to take our lives to the next level. Let's do it, ladies and gentlemen. That just reminded me, because we're seeking to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment and make happiness the way instead of the goal. Because when happiness is the way, the goal will also become the way. Interesting. All right. Love you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. We'll be back next week for Tuesday Tao. Or if I get something interesting that comes up that I want to let you know about, we'll be back before then. All right. Thanks for watching.